So we had some of our firefighters, our local firefighters, go down to Los Angeles, and I was asking like what they observed, like which houses were still standing and why. And Patrick, did you want to say something about that? You can be the first presenter, in fact, and just segue right into that. Oh, but I'm gonna need to give you this. This is the microphone. Is it working? Or do we know if it's working? Anyway, let's hold on to that.
All right, perfect. Got it. Let's hang it here. All right. So really quickly, we did have crews down in LA for about 3 weeks, all of our local engine companies, our local strike teams, a lot of overhead positions. The one thing that my fire prevention officer, he was down there as a strike team leader trainee, told me that the first night they were there, they were going from house to house, the houses that were still standing, breaking off all the wood dog ear fences that were still attached to houses. That was contributing to a lot of the houses burning when they got there, which totally makes sense because that goes right up into the bottom of the eaves, having that kindling attached right to the side of your house. So that's just one. I haven't really jumped in with the engine companies that much to what they were seeing, but that was what my prevention officer told me was a big spread. And I know that was one of the big outcomes when we looked back at the Tubbs fire down in Santa Rosa when it blew through there, was that those wood dog ear fences are just a wick for fire through the neighborhoods. Everyone puts them up. They look great for about the first 6 months, 8 months, and then they just dry out and become just bone dry. And once you do that, embers, all little cracks, they're just ember catchers at that point. So it doesn't take much to get them to go. Yep, they just run them. A lot of times they have a gate, but we try and get that first 5 feet. Remember that ember resistant zone, separate that with a metal gate or something, break that separation from the house or create that separation. What else is going on with the fire district? We're still working through our reorganization right now. We are hopefully going to get that wrapped up by January, a year from now, pretty much. That's the reorganization of Consolidated, Nevada County Consolidated, Penn Valley, Rough and Ready, and the Ophir Hill Fire Protection Districts. We're all going to have to basically dissolve our fire districts, and then we'll all come back as one, which is Nevada County Fire Rescue, under one name at that point. So we're still working through the financial analysis at this point. Meet back with LAFCO and then with the County Board of Supervisors and see what we can do to make this whole thing finally happen. It's been years in the making. For those of you up on Banner Mountain, we are starting our remodel of the Station 86 up there. It's Banner and Valley View. They're going to do a whole interior remodel on the station. So while that remodel's happening, the crews are going to be housed out of Station 84 right down here on Coyote Street during the night. During the day, they're going to be back up top. They're going to either be hanging out there or they'll go down to the station in Cascade Shores and hang out there sometimes. So they'll be up there during the day, but at night they're sleeping back down the hill here. So if you see them not there, we didn't close the station. We're just going to get through that interior remodel. And we should be awarding that bid here by the end of this week. So hopefully work starts. You know, whatever, all of it. The kitchen's big. Yeah. And then the other thing that I always throw out at all these meetings I come to always is that we are always looking to come out and do property walks with homeowners. I just did one out on Greenhorn Road the other day, and the discussions we got into led to all the fine little cracks around the house. They had beautiful clearance, the vegetation, the 5-foot ember resistant zones, but it's the fuzzy doormat sitting at the front door. It's the patio cushions. It's the gaps right along the edge of the deck. They got wood siding on their house. So that's kind of where it's steered, but it's always an open door. You can always reach out to our admin office and set an appointment with me or my other prevention officer, and we'll just come out and walk your property. We'll look at home hardening. We'll look at everything. There's one other thing I thought of. I can't come up with it right now. Yep. Or if I get it, I'll just toss it out.
And if you think of it later, just feel free to
Yeah.
raise your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be a Nevada County Fire and Rescue.
Nice ring to it.
It is.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the other thing I was gonna think of.
I'll just stand right here.
Sorry. Was the, we do have stood up right now, a pre-position, with OES. It's brand new for us. We, a swift water task force that stood up right down here at the Coyote Street Station. So there are 6 people on duty right now throughout this entire storm, standing by just for swift water response, flood response. And then on top of that, we do have the local strike team, the 5 engines, pre-positioned with the state also. So if we have any major incidents, not just for fire, if we get flooding, we get something like that, those 5 engines can be stood up and also assist. So that's been available since last Friday, and it's going to run through this Friday. Yeah.
See you on Coyote all the time, and they're clearing on either side of Coyote.
Yeah.
Right now. Are they going, like they're still overhanging trees and stuff, or are they, how is that being, who says that's a good job and that's gonna make sure the fires don't come down, because cars driving down Coyote when people are escaping or.
Right, so that project is the city of Nevada City, and that would be Evan over there with their fuels crew. And I can't answer how far they're gonna go off the sides of the roads or what else they're gonna take down, but they have been doing an awesome job. They've been pulling a lot of material out of there. Yeah.
Do you know if they're stopping at the top of Coyote, or are they going out north? Direction?
I would imagine they're gonna stop at the top because it's the city of Nevada City crew, so, yeah.
Is it not?
We're having trouble hearing the conversations.
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. Are we doing any better in Zoom land? Oh, good. Okay, then I will repeat the question. The question was, there are people clearing Coyote Street. How far up do we think they're going to go? Are they going to go all the way to North Bloomfield? The answer was probably not, but they're doing a great job and we wanted to commend them. Okay, do we have CAL FIRE here? Is Mickey? I don't see Mickey. Okay, so now we're going to try something different. We're going to try to get Rocky on Zoom to present for City of Grass Valley and City of Nevada City. Do we know how we're going to do that yet?
Sure.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. Is Rocky on Zoom? Is Rocky out there somewhere? Okay. Rocky, are you on Zoom? Okay, if you are on Zoom, let Susan know and we'll bring you up later. All right, let's skip ahead to, oh. Are we ready for him to present? Oh. Okay. Turn off the speaker so that there's not an echo. But if I talk in here, oh, okay. Sorry, Rocky. If you get your audio back, let us know and we'll zoom you in. All right. Thanks again for bearing with us. Alex, would you like to talk about what the Office of Emergency Services is up to? Here's your mic. Oh, yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm the Interim Director of Office of Emergency Services for Nevada County. So what do we have going on? We are bringing our countywide community wildfire protection plan to the Board of Supervisors next week, February 11th, for a request for the chair to sign that. So thank you to all of you who've been part of that process so far. If you're interested in seeing a presentation on the final results, the board agenda gets published on Thursday, and myself and our county wildfire coordinator will be giving a presentation on that. The document itself will also go up on the CWPP website on Thursday. It's more than 765 pages for just the county portion alone. And then there's additional annexes, including Truckee Fire Protection District, City of Nevada City. So it's quite a lengthy document, and we will have some executive summaries associated with that to kind of direct you to information about your specific forecast zone if that's of interest. At our board workshop a couple weeks ago, we got direction from the board to double down on our biomass pilot project. So we currently have 2 Tiger Cat carbonizers out at our Labar Meadows site. These are essentially converting large woody debris into biochar, which is a value-added soil amendment. We are looking to process 5,500 tons of material that way. And the board has directed us to look into what it would look like to double that project. It's essentially a way for us to address some of the large woody material that's really difficult to handle through other means. And it's also a way for us to actually remove the biomass from Nevada County instead of rearrange it. So when we cut down ladder fuel or surface fuel and we chip it and spread it, we're just rearranging that fuel into a less egregious form. But we're really looking at how do we remove the material in its entirety from Nevada County. Related to green waste type things, we have nailed down 5 dates for West County events starting at the end of April. Those will be going up on our green waste site next week. So 5 free drop-off events at the McCourtney Transfer Station. We're looking into some additional programming that will likely be strategic placement of green waste bins in Firewise communities and potentially some roadside chipping as well. So more to come on that. We're trying to figure out how to best use our available funds to meet everyone's needs. We'll also have 3 East County green waste events as well as part of that programming. Just for your situational awareness, our EOC coordinator, we had Russell Green, who is rotating out, and we're having Sergeant Andrew Liller rotate in advance of fire season. So just for those who like to request to have someone from the sheriff's office come out and give presentations, Andrew will be your guy. He's fantastic. He grew up here, so he's got a lot of situational knowledge. We are rolling out our U.S. Forest Service Critical Evacuation Route Grant Program on schedule as planned. So we'll be releasing the RFP mid-March. That's for the $20,000 grant to Firewise communities, HOAs, neighborhood associations, agencies, schools, etc. We're still nailing down the criteria, and we will likely do some different levels of funding so that folks can access different levels of funding depending on their needs. So we probably will not be sticking with just $20,000 grants, but we'll be doing, I think, 5, 10, and 20 or some sort of scale there. We'll do a grant workshop on that, which will be in April with our new registered professional forester to walk folks through what that proposal process will look like, how to tee up a strategic proposal. And then finally, project updates. We have 4 shaded fuel break projects that are in various states of having the environmental compliance documentation completed. So we're using the CalVTP CEQA process for all of them. For Woodpecker Ravine, we've got 361 acres of treatment designed. For Ponderosa Phase 1 maintenance, we have 700 acres. For Ponderosa Phase 2, we have 90. And for South Yuba Rim, we actually have 5,600 acres that will fall under that environmental compliance document, and we'll ultimately be doing 800 acres of treatment with FEMA funding. We did apply for CAL FIRE Forest Health Grant funds to build that project out a little bit more with some other partners who have shovel-ready projects. Yeah, so if you go online Oh, sorry. So the question was, can folks see maps of the different projects? These are available on OES's Ready Nevada County landing page under projects. There is a project page for each one of the aforementioned projects. And there's actually a lookup tool there. So if you have an address or an APN and you're curious if you're in the project area, you can actually enter that information and it will let you know kind of where you fall in that scope. Sure. So right now, our direction from the board is to look at scaling up our biomass pilot project, which is producing biochar. And that is because City of Grass Valley is actually currently working with West Biofuels on getting a bioenergy plant sited. And then for those of you familiar with Camptonville Community Partnership in Yuba County, but very near us, they're actually moving forward as well. So there's a couple of different options in Nevada County that are pushing forward right now. So we're trying to be strategic because for those of you that track those processes, it can be 5 to 10 years of planning before you actually get something on the ground. And we recognize that our need is very immediate. And maybe the best gap for us to fill is finding ways to deal with green waste that's coming off of individual parcels, large woody debris that's coming off of roadsides, and filling a more immediate gap.
So then, what biochar, are you gonna sell it, or are you gonna, what's the purpose with that?
Yeah, great question. So we are working with our partners. Oh, sorry. The question was, what will we be doing with the biochar itself? So right now we are working with Earth Foundries, who is the entity that is running the carbonizers, and we are planning for the home for the biochar. Our hope in a perfect world is to partner with folks like the RCD or folks who are in the business of local agriculture and find a home for that product, because though biochar itself doesn't have nutrient value, so it's basically carbonized wood, it's carbon, it doesn't have any value in and of itself. What is unique about it is it has lots of binding surfaces on it, which means it holds nutrients and water better than just traditional soil. So there's an opportunity there to amend soil in a way that offsets water use and fertilizer or other amendments that creates kind of this very nice climate resiliency piece with that product. But right now we're not looking to sell it per se, although what we would like to do is demonstrate the added value of this product so that long term we can find a way to pay biomass out of the forest through products like biochar.
Is funding secure, or could it be at risk given the current political environment?
Great question. So the scaling up funding is secure for what's happening currently. The scaling up of the project would be contingent upon the board itself deciding to advance that request through the budget process. So there were a number of different options that were given to the board at the board workshop. The board made decisions then which ones they wanted to see more research around and kind of proposals come forward through our charters on. One of them was scaling up the biomass project to a budget of about $660,000. We will do that. We will kind of build out what that looks like. That's double what we're doing currently. So it'd be more like 10,000 tons of material we could process. And then the board would make a decision about whether or not they felt comfortable pushing that forward.
Dumpsters be made available to Firewise communities this year? And if so, do you know what month yet if that will happen?
So yes, green waste bins will be made available to Firewise communities. The way we are going to deploy the bins is going to be different than it was last year, because we're looking to place those bins very strategically to meet the kind of greatest need. And we identified some best practices last year through how it worked with the request system and which bins were utilized well versus which bins were not utilized well. So yes, and as far as when those bins will be deployed, we're looking at probably May. Yeah, so OES's team of defensible space inspectors has currently been out in neighborhoods vetting alignment with the evacuation study and need and other pieces of situational awareness. And so they're kind of trying to see where like roadside chipping would be a valuable resource to provide and where a bin would be a valuable resource to provide. And they're doing the same thing with where pickup of large woody debris through the biomass pilot project is a good fit. Because we're really trying to determine with the resources we have available, how can we best provide a service that meets the need and kind of fits. So an example would be folks on the San Juan Ridge wanted to have large woody debris picked up for the biomass pilot project. Because of the transport involved there, it doesn't really make a ton of sense for that project because we're trying to limit transport of debris because that costs money and expends carbon. And so we would be looking to place green waste bins potentially out there for those folks. So really just trying to figure out what best suits the community need.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah. And I have flyers on the biomass pilot project if anyone's interested.
Great, flyers. Yes, Fire Safe Council, Pete Wilson, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Pete Williams, Board Chair for the Fire Safe Council. And I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. In fact, first relates to what Bob was talking about early on, and that is that he has uncashed checks for how much, Bob? A couple $100 each, maybe?
Total of $2,100 is.
It's still outstanding, yeah. Right. Okay. And you know, that's the result of what? The last Firewise festival that we had. We've had 2 of them now. And we worked with a committee of folks from the Firewise communities to put these fundraisers on. And they've been, quote, successful, unquote. But when you think about it, though, it's a lot of work for not all that much money. And so when I think we netted something like after expenses of around $26,000 this last June 1st. Here we are still trying to get money distributed. And that's not the big issue. The big issue is that it's just not a lot of money. And so we think, and so the committee that has been working on this for the last couple of years really said, you know, this for the amount of work we're doing, maybe there's a better way. So right now the committee is looking into other options of raising money to help the Firewise communities. And it's really something the county's doing with their mini grants, which is great. And we think we can do more in that area. You know, we've spent a lot of time in the last 6 or 8 years growing the Firewise community program from like 20 to now 104, is it? 104, 105, and with several more, 30 more waiting in the wings. So that's great, but we can all do a little more in helping the communities with their projects. And so we think that raising $26,000 and having some communities win a drawing and win 3,000 or 2,000 or 1,000 or less, or get 325 doesn't help as much as maybe some other sources of income. So that's our kind of, we're pivoting and can go that way in the future. The other thing I want to talk about just briefly is the Deer Creek project, Deer Creek Canyon project. And some of you may have been at you're nodding your head, at the town hall on January 9th. I was not there, I was gone, but it was well attended and the project is moving along. There's a couple misimpressions maybe that I wanted to get across, that we're in the first phase, which is the planning phase. And I think if you were there, you heard about what that entails. And a lot of it has to do with reaching out to the landowners, 325 parcels, I think, because a lot of folks haven't heard about it, didn't attend the meeting, but you know, it's really a great deal for them if they want to participate. So the idea is get the word out to them. And if they say, yeah, I want to be in, then it's a matter of saying, we need to come to your land and kind of check it out and see what needs to be done and get your agreement on what's going to be done and make sure they're confident that we could do the work for them and not be afraid of us, frankly, because some people don't want to have, you know, someone on their land working, doing something to their land. They're afraid of that for good reason. So that process of getting to the point that we have identified all of the landowners and getting we've done that, but to make sure that they're interested in doing this. And so it's a process that's going to take some time. We have until the end of August to finish this phase before we go on to the next phase, which is environmental, and that takes a while. So it's going to be a year plus before anybody starts cutting anything down or doing any groundwork. So that's kind of where it's at in case you heard about it and don't know some of the details. So that's really all it's going to cover unless there's something else. I thought you might ask that. I've been gone. I asked that question because I read about what was happening in Washington from a distance, and what I heard was it is, but I frankly don't really know because things can change in this political environment. Who knows what's going to happen? So I think it is. At this point, all we're dealing with is the $200,000 for the initial phase, the big money, because it was a $7.8 million grant. That comes later. I mean, that money. That's before you actually get to work on the ground. That's a year or longer away from now. So that's where I say, I hope it's okay. But I've been assured it is, but we'll see.
Just trying to get rid of people who are not spending the money.
Yeah.
So there's a specific
language. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That is available to all you have to do is submit it and it's good. It's gold. So
yeah. Well, we've kind of got to that stage. There's a long application to get the grant approved by us or granted to us. So we think that language has been developed, and so the powers that be in FEMA has said yes, and we just hope that it stays yes. Yeah, I agree.
Great, thanks, Pete. Sure. Did we get Rocky's audio going? Is that going to be possible or no? Okay. Okay. So as you can see, we're still working through all our audio issues. Look for a survey coming soon about how many people really want to attend in person, how many people want to attend Zoom. We'll continue to work to solve the problems. In the meantime, we have a special presentation from the Harmony Firewise community about dry hydrants. Who wants the mic for this? Terry wants the mic. Oh, right.
All right, thank you. Everybody hear me from here? How's this?
Sounds good.
Can they hear me online?
Yes, sounds good.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Okay, I'll project. I do have a soft voice. I apologize. So I'm here today with my neighbor and Harmony Firewise colleague, Randall Strawson, and we're going to talk about how we have managed to use a swimming pool as
complaints in the back.
Oh, sorry.
Got to do both.
Piece of duct tape. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk today about how we figured out how to use a swimming pool in our neighborhood as a source for fire suppression. And I want to make clear that this is a source for fire suppression for our firefighters to use. You've heard a lot recently about what's going on in LA and concerns about fire hydrants and not working. That's not what this conversation is about. This is very specifically about how firefighters can use swimming pools and possibly other sources, and we'll get into that, to help put out fires. Uh-oh, we're not advancing here. There we go. Okay. So first, a little bit about Harmony Firewise. We're a very small Firewise community, little less than 400 acres. We're bordered on the south side by Highway 20 and on the west by North Bloomfield Road. We also have two Firewise communities in training that are our neighbors. I can make this work here. We have Bush neighborhood here, and we have Baca, Bloomfield and Cooper Community Association here. They're in training. They're really big, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to work together. This is us here, Highway 20 here, North Bloomfield Road, cutting up towards the river that way. And down here, we have a very large undeveloped parcel. Now our community, again, is small. We only have about 75 properties. The largest property is 90 acres. Most of them are around 5, some 10, and some even as small as a quarter or a half an acre. So that's where we are. So this is the same section of the map, and this is a map from NID. I don't know if you've all seen this on their website. It's a fire hydrant locator. And you can see, you know, Harmony's right in here. And we have this is in our community is very small, but all the way to the river, there's no fire hydrants. Along Harmony, our Firewise community, there's a few on North Bloomfield Road and a few going out Highway 20. But for the most part, I'd say 2/3 of our community has no access to fire hydrants. So when OES announced their microgrant program last spring, Randall here responded with a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, it didn't exactly meet the criteria that OES had for providing the microgrants, but that's okay. We took a risk. We thought it was a good idea. So it turns out Randall lives on V Court, which is right about here, which is over a mile to the nearest fire hydrant. That means that if a fire truck wants to refill, if there's a fire in his neighborhood, wants to refill, they have to drive a mile to the nearest fire hydrant to refill. But it turns out he had in his backyard, one of his neighbors, a 32,000-gallon pool, which was just sitting there most of the year. Sure, people swam in it, but there's this huge source of water sitting there. So he proposed that we put in a dry hydrant that would tap that pool to provide a source for firefighters to use. So what exactly does 32,000 gallons look like? What does that mean? So this here is a picture of the, whoops, sorry. This is the pool. Looks just like an ordinary pool. It's actually a pretty big pool. And this is what it translates into if all that water were to go into a water tender, 12 2,500 water tenders, 16 2,000-gallon water tenders. And my understanding, and this is very shallow, is that water tenders come in various sizes. I think this is the kind that CAL FIRE uses here. So that's a lot of refills of water that could be used in our neighborhood if there was a fire. So now I'm going to turn this over to Randall.
Yes. Both ladies, okay. I think you've got too much confidence in me. Nobody's ever told me my voice is soft, but I'll use this. I want to back up just for 1 second. So my wife and I had put in a 3,000-gallon fire suppression tank on our property. And so I sent an email out to all of our neighbors and said, you know, we're doing this. And not very Christian, but the instructions were put out the fire in our house first, but then you're welcome to use it in the neighborhood. And by the way, does anybody else have a tank or a pool or a pond that could also be a dry hydrant? I knew that there were 2 neighbors who had pools and one who had a pond, but I didn't want to put pressure on anyone. And I got a response back from one person, but it was a really big response. It was a neighbor with a 32,000-gallon pool. And he said very simply, I'm going to add a 32,000-gallon tank to the equation. My jaw dropped. I mean, suddenly our tank was like the 97-pound weakling. Terry and I had a meeting with Patrick and his fire prevention officer to talk about 2 primary options for dry hydrants, the pool at my neighbor's house or the pond across the street. And conclusion was that for reasons maybe we can get into a little bit later, the pond was it was better suited. It had better access and was easier to use for water. So we saw in LA that people's pools all of a sudden became a big resource, a real asset. Although what Terry mentioned is really important. Our idea here was not to turn the homeowner into a firefighter, would-be firefighter. That we've got firefighters who are trained. Our intention was to give them a tool that they needed, which was water. And that's an important distinction. Because in fact, some people now, like in LA, are inspired by what happened in LA, are putting in, and Patrick could talk about this, pumps. They'll just draw water out of the pool that the homeowner will probably use, to try to fight fires. That's not what this is. You'll see that this is a professional setup. What did you, Terry? I'm going backwards, right? Okay, I guess that was the next one. This is a setup in the pool. So basically dry hydrant, okay, what does that mean? It just means, and Patrick jump in at any point when I say something that's incorrect. I just think of it as a reservoir of water, some collection of water in a tank, a pool or something. And then you need a way to provide firefighter access. And that's what it's called a hydrant. That's the red thing next to the fire protection sign. That's fitted, talking about this being set up for professional firefighters, both a 2.5 and a 4.5, is that correct? Valve, so that no matter what equipment the firefighters show up with, they don't have to fiddle around with an adapter, or they don't get stalled out as far as access, that water's there and ready for them. And incidentally, people, as you're, talking up this idea, which I hope you will, the fire department will refill the pool. Okay, if they draw the water, Patrick said, yeah, we'll replace it. So they don't have to think you're out water. We start off with sort of a bad pun about, this untapped resource. Now I got a worse one coming up on the costs. What am I doing wrong here, Terry? Okay. So, the scale economy, well, first of all, the costs of water when you store it, okay, roughly $2 a gallon, okay? This is a really important point. There aren't what you would call scale economies in these tanks. So you put in 40,000 gallons worth of tanks, holding water, you're going to pay about the same amount per gallon. Pool, you can see, is less than a quarter compared to over $2. Just really quickly, why don't you have these scale economies in tanks? I asked Luke Hale from Peters about that because it seemed perplexing. I usually think, okay, I buy a giant box of Cheerios, it's going to be cheaper per serving than if I get a little box. Part of the problem is the transportation costs skyrocket when you get into really big tanks. But the other thing is, this is what economists would call the sunk cost. Okay, the homeowner's already paid to build the pool, so you don't have to fold those costs into the setup. So $7,000 could buy you, for example, a 3,000 gallon tank, or $7,000 could allow you roughly to tap into a 32,000 gallon pool. Okay, and so that's a really, really good reason for using pools and seeing them as a resource. I guess I actually already did that one. That's the fire, the official fire suppression sign on the right. I think I was asking your fire prevention officer about this, and they had a good line. Something like, when you place the sign, make sure that it can be seen when the firefighters are driving in the dark and it's raining and 15 other conditions like that. It's going to be highly visible. And this is not a tiny sign. This thing is it's large. By the way, another thing about a pool is that, and Patrick made me aware of this because, VCORT's a little private road that comes up off North Bloomfield. And I said, okay, should we also put a sign down at the bottom of VCORT in North Bloomfield? And Patrick said, no, because it'll just invite water thieves, okay, which is a real concern in Nevada County. And then Patrick pointed out, well, the big advantage of the pool is, I don't think that, growers are going to want chlorinated water on their plants. Oh, so it's another reason why a pool is really a great thing to think about. Lots of guidelines, you can find them. You can call the very helpful people at NCZ Fire to get directed to where these are, all the regulations. Patrick kindly, walked Terry through, all of our answers to all of our questions on this. You can also find, by the way, the schematic for tapping into a pool. I'm not a construction guy or engineer, but that seemed way more complicated to me than the pool setting up for a pump. But you can also find all those diagrams on that website. Super helpful. Okay, so this shows, basically the pipe coming down, the trenching. probably only helped things that this was coming downhill, but you got to remember this is past it. And I think, is that one of the main distinctions, Patrick, between a dry and a wet hydrant, that this isn't under pressure? Are wet hydrants under pressure?
Yes, they
They could be
are.
either way. Okay. Yeah. So this, what a truck comes up and pumps the water out. They just pulling it out. Okay. And so this is like, I think, a 4-inch diameter pipe that's coming down. In this case, fortunately downhill, but access to the firefighters, trucks is all really, really good. Don't worry, I'll get this by the end of the presentation. Yeah, work through. Child labor. And there's the sign, close up of the sign. All this, the specs of the sign, that's all spelled out. Everything you can go into this the way Tara and I did. Well, speaking for myself at least, never having done this before. I'm not an MIT engineer. You could walk through everything. Documentation is very simple. The professionals, like Patrick especially, spoon feed you, as far as inspections, answering questions, and anybody can do this, which is really amazing. And, I feel that if there were a network of these through the county, it would only be a great resource. So this is GPS mapped, and CAL FIRE also, they have a different system, different mapping system at the moment, although they might be integrated. Understand? So firefighters know where this is, and if there were a network of these throughout the county, I think it'd be huge. Going back, so 2017, January 17, there was a log cabin below my house, and it burned down. And we had embers the size of saucers floating up to our house. And this is before the days of Dunkin' Donuts. And fortunately, it's a wet January, and they had to go all the way down to Coyote. Patrick told me, to fill up for that. And when you're watching something burn like that, I'll tell you, every second dilates in an unbelievable manner. Every second seems like, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And so the ability to get water fast is really critical. Last comment, I find it kind of reassuring that in the 21st century, digital this, blah, 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 water still has such primacy as a firefighting agent and such a tool. Put it in the hands of the trained people and keep things from burning down, keep people from getting killed, keep the environment, the ecosystem being destroyed as much, and so on and so forth. So tap into this. It's a great resource, great opportunity. And I don't know if there were any quick questions or. Sure. Sorry, Terry. Terry put the PowerPoint together. Oh, okay. You want to go through this, Terry? Please.
So I don't know how many folks here live in the parts of the county where there aren't fire hydrants, but okay, lots of you. Yeah. So there's, fire hydrants all around Nevada City and Grass Valley. I guess they have their own systems of hydrants, and NID has all the rest of the hydrants, and there's, over 5,000 of them around the county. But if you are one of those folks that do not have a fire hydrant and you're thinking about it for your community, here's some questions to ask. Do you have a swimming pool in your neighborhood? Are the owners amenable to doing this? We were very fortunate that the fellow in our neighborhood volunteered his pool. Does NCC Fire, under its new name, they'll have a new name, agree that it could be useful in that location? So Patrick was instrumental and very helpful in making it happen, because they need to consult. They're the ones that are most likely to be using it first. Is the location accessible to fire vehicles? I think there's some standards around, hard surface so that a fire truck can pull up there. What I don't know is a question, how steep of a slope can there be? What happens if the pool is below the road? Does that rule it out? And who will maintain the pool and the hydrant? I think that's an important question. Is it the Firewise community? Is it the property owner? I think, technically, legally, probably the property owner is the person who needs to do that. But what if they're an older person and they just can't quite do it? Does that make the fire hydrant go out of service?
And dry hydrant, so it won't go out of service.
Right, but if it gets messed up because, you know, somebody cut the pipe and nobody's paying attention. So finally, how can this idea be scaled? We went and talked with Supervisor Hall and some other folks at the county to get their receptiveness to this idea. And they encouraged us to come to this meeting and try to scale it up. So I hope you all might have some other ideas about how we can get the word out. And Randall here had something on Ubinet, so some of you saw that, I know. And could there be incentives for property owners to install dry hydrants in new pools? So if someone's about to build something, we talked with the county officials, can there be some kind of requirement? They were reluctant to do that. But could there be some kind of other incentive? Maybe it's a tax incentive. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. And what about for existing pools? How can we encourage people to do that? Yes.
It was a little hard to tell from the picture how you integrate that pipe with an existing pool. How did it work?
Yeah, maybe, I'm sorry, maybe we went too fast. Terry, maybe you could find the slide faster than I could, but it's really very simple. Okay. Just think of a pipe going into the pool. Okay. So that's how the water's going to get drawn out. And then that goes down to this thing called the hydrant, which is what the firefighters will hook up to. So can you see it there? Terry, maybe you want to laser it or see that white thing under there? That's it. That's not like Jaws.
To existing, you're breaking apart the side
Yeah,
of the pool.
yeah. I think you could go over it too if you didn't want to do that.
I think it's generally 2-inch. So I don't know whether there's a way to tie, there are several lines there. Your drain and your side supply. And if you could tie several pieces together down in the pump rooms and make a full connection, it's drawing in several places on the pool, that would be a viable option.
You know, we had Peters also come out and bid on this, and this wasn't exactly the way they were going to do it. So there are multiple ways to skin this cat. I'm sorry, they're cat lovers. But the basic idea is the straw is going in there and pulling the water out, and the fire department the other end can hook up to it. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm sorry. Question? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Fighting devices is the bucket is helicopter. How would they work in pools? In other words, the helicopter scoops.
I don't think they work with Patrick, is that? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, repeat the question. So I don't know what that's called, but where a helicopter, say, would come in and with a bucket, I'll call it a bucket, scoop water out of, say, a pond or a lake or something like that. Would that work here? I would imagine that a pool is too small for that, but I don't know. Patrick would know. Yeah.
Tree cover stuff like it's got to be pretty open for a helicopter to be able to come in. That's a lot of lift.
How quickly could a helicopter come into our area? Right.
I should look helicopter.
Do you want the mic? Mike's plural.
I get all of this stuff. My name is Steve Randalls. I was the director of maintenance at LMX Aviation down in McClellan. And I've got about 34 years of commercial firefighting with aviation, air tankers, helicopters, and the like. To answer your question about dipping out of a pool or a pond even, is like he said, pre-clearance. The overburden, okay? The medium bells, the UEs as everybody calls them, there's different ones. They use 150-foot or 200-foot long lines attached to the bucket. CAL FIRE goes to the belly with theirs, okay? So if they can get in there without the rotors being jeopardized and get it out, they can take out of a pool or pond. And they've done that. So they've taken out of pools, ponds. I remember back in the 90s, they were taken out of a fish pond that the state had fishing, and they were literally dropping the fish on it. It happens. The nearest one is in Mina by Chico. It's a black hawk. They can be here pretty quick. It depends on how big the fire. They can dip in those areas if they can get access with the loaded list. They use a 150-foot line with the bucket. The bridle on the bucket is probably 20 feet. You're about 175 on that line, and or a 200 foot. They'll size the line based on if they're dumping on a slope or something like that. The bills, it's 325 gallons. On the Sikorsky's, the S-61, it's about almost 600 gallons. Most of the aircraft, the 61s, the Nooks that we operate, they're all breathe-on. Same amount of retardant or water as a C-130. The option that the Nook has is it can cover it. State just got them.
I guess my question is for Patrick, the tanks. If there's a fire, do the firefighters go, yay, there's a tank, and tap into it, or do they go around the tank and like, how valuable is it for me to have one or two of those tanks on my property, since I'm not gonna spend six figures for a pool?
When we are mounting.
Let me repeat the question here. The question is how valuable is it for firefighters, for property owners to have tanks? Are they going to be using them?
So, absolutely. We will grab water from anywhere we can.
So when a homeowner goes to the company that is going to set that system up, do they have in mind accessibility for fire engines, or are they looking at gravity, or are they looking at many things?
So if somebody wants to set up within the Consolidated Fire District, somebody wants to set up a water storage tank, basically you'll send me a site plan that shows all the dimensions and roadway dimensions, because you can't block a road when you're filling up with water. So you need a turnout. You got to get within 10 feet of the hydrant for a hard suction to reach. So there's a site plan. There's basically a plan review done, and I give all my comments back, and then it's built to that.
Sierra Plumbing has a diagram. We did this at our house. They have a diagram that shows all the plumbing to get out of the big tank up to a fire hydrant, so to speak. Patrick came out to our place and looked at it, and it was all has to be 4 inches, big stuff, but they've got a diagram down in Sierra that all the parts.
And on my property, Patrick came out and looked at alternative sites. I showed him a few places we had thought of and clearly pointed out the best one. So we had the advantage of that expertise from day one.
I think the biggest point is when we fill a fire engine, you can't fill it without overflowing. And unfortunately, the overflow is right at the rear axle underneath. So you got to make sure you're on good solid ground. You can't be on loose dirt, otherwise we're going to make a muck the first time we throw it.
There's a question from Zoom. She says, is a tank with hydrants considered a dry hydrant? I'm not sure what she means by a tank with hydrants.
Once again, defer to Patrick, but I'd say yes, because you've got the water reservoir, which is the tank, and then you've got what we're calling the hydrant, which is that hookup for the fire engine. So I'd say yes. Is that correct? Yeah.
With this kind of system that's up there, you have to pull the water out of the draft hydrant.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, please, give us a call somewhere on here. We've got our contact information. There you go. Thank you.
Interesting. Wow, I learned a lot. Okay. We're going to pivot to a fundraising discussion. I'm just curious, how many of you have had success with raising money in your Firewise communities? Okay, a few. And any kind of money that you need for your community? Some success. And some people, how many people have wanted to raise money but have encountered challenges or have struggled raising money? About the same amount. Okay. So we heard about some grants from the county coming down our way, and then there's some other ways people have been successful in finding money for their Firewise communities. Bob, I'm looking at you because I know you have a
Oh, boy. Yeah. Which is, where's the microphone here? It's okay. Anyway, so as far as raising money goes, I wish I had a magic bullet. There's what I've used several times in fundraise. It's called the YMCA plan. I did it when I worked with the YMCA. I was on their board for 13 years in Salinas in the 70s and the 80s, and every year we raised $100,000. It was 10% of our budget. It worked at the YMCA, so I took it to my parish for their annual drive. And this isn't a way of raising money for a project. This was an annual operational money drive. And it worked for our parish. We increased the take each year by 10%. I'd like to tell you there's a magic bullet and it's easy to do, but how did we do it? We asked for it. We just went out and asked people for money. Don't laugh, it works. And the way it works, and I mean, I can get into it later with you individually. The first thing you do is your board of directors or your Firewise community board all commits to donating some amount of money. So you can go out to the community and say 100% of the board has donated money and we've raised $1,000 already. Then you recruit your team, team captains. And of course, when they agree to be a captain, they pony up money. So now 100% of your leadership has given money. Then they go out and they recruit their team members. And of course, they have to give money. And so then the team members go out and raise money. And of course, part of this is the party that goes along with it. We would meet every Tuesday morning for a month, and there'd be prizes. And if you collected the most money, you got a pair of YMCA socks. So I've got lots of socks. And so there's not a magic bullet, but it works. I did it in my community, and we needed to raise money we needed $10,000 to chip all the trees that we cut down in a fire break. And I raised the 10,000. There's 60 homes, and I raised $10,000, and I did it by asking for it. And so that works. But should I go on with where to put the money?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's really what I want to ask you about tonight. So I contacted the Community Foundation of Nevada County. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a relatively new nonprofit 501c3 in the community. It's been around for about 18 months. And they were, I think, perhaps a different flavor before that. But they're out there to act as a fiscal intermediary. And I've been talking with them, and I don't have a commitment from them yet, but they're agreeing to work with us as a place to put your money. I think the 7 communities that I listed earlier tonight, they don't know what to do with that $325 check I sent to them. They're afraid to cash it. It doesn't hurt when you do it, I can tell you. But They don't know what to do with the money. Well, this is a place to put the money. It's a nonprofit. So if you're raising $10,000, the neighbors can write a check to the community foundation and it's tax deductible. So that makes you feel a little better when you write even a $100 check. Really makes you feel good when you write a $1,000 check. So it'd be a place to park the money. And what we need to assess among the 104 now Firewise communities, is there a need for us to form a relationship with the community foundation? And so that's what I really need to hear about tonight. Do you need a place to park your money? One person does, three. Well, right now it'd be pretty cheap because I'm not even sure they have a staff. And so right now the admin fee may be voluntary. It may be a voluntary thing. We'd have to negotiate that, but it wouldn't be the 10 or 15% that you would be paying to a existing 501c3. It'd be a lot less. Yeah. Yeah.
I also moved here to Mendocino County that has a community foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. There you gotta hang on all that stuff.
I'm Diane from Greenhorn Firewise Community. Hello, Patrick. Nice to see you. Greenhorn Firewise has gotten a 501c3 status. And if you choose to do that, remember to do it with the state and not just the IRS. They both want the pulse of what you're doing. It's valuable to have a place like the community foundation to put your money, because then they are your fiscal and they could be an umbrella organization that would spare you all from having to become 501c3s. There's value in that. Of course, you should expect paperwork, and of course they may have a fee, and of course the fee may go up. Just because they're new doesn't mean that they're not going to grow and have to figure things out and all that. But it could save you a lot of time that would be worth it. And if you want to talk about installing water tanks, Greenhorn Firewise installed 4 10,000-gallon tanks to make up for the lack of fire hydrants in our community. I got a really cool PowerPoint too.
So to that end, it is not impossible to form your own 501c3 corporation. I've done that. The upside is it's really not hard to do. It costs you a few bucks to file with the feds in the state. The downside is you have to file taxes every year. You have to have a board of directors. You have to file every year with the state and report your officers. You have to remember to do things. And you have to have meetings, and you have to have insurance. So so if you're big enough, yes, it's a great way to go. If you're, the size of my community, Sherwood Forest, with 64 homes, it would never pay for us to do it. So, but we're an association. So we actually have an EIN, an identification number with the state of California, and our neighborhood has a checking account, and that's where our $325 went. It went into the neighborhood checking account. I don't tell anybody that it's there. I mean, except the neighbors. The sheriff doesn't know, the IRS doesn't know, the state doesn't know that it's there, and I report to no one that money other than the neighbors. So you can also do that. Anyway, there was a question in the back. No? Yes. We thought of others, but most of the other nonprofits, there are several nonprofits that are engaged in fire safe practices. There's not enough money that we generate to make it worth their while. Yeah, and even with the community foundation, we would have to consolidate in order to work with them because they an organization a going concern can't manage $2,000. They can manage 20 or 30,000 bucks, but 2,000 is hard to manage. So so we'd have to consolidate things to make it work. But the question is, do we need it? If we need it, we'll work it out.
Sounds like a survey question.
It does, right along with, can you hear me out there? Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm hoping Robert's bringing us in the room, because I recently had a conversation with some other folks in our public works department.
And something that came up is challenges for Firewise communities that are interested in getting encroachment permits along county maintained roads so that you can go out and do vegetation management. And one of the hangups seems to be that, yes, you can apply for an encroachment permit, but there are insurance requirements to do that, which means that you have to have some sort of fiscal sponsor that actually has the insurance that meets those requirements. So a question I would just pose to you, generally speaking, to think about is, how valuable would it be for Firewise communities to be able to easily get encroachment permits and do that work? And then if so, I would challenge you to talk to the Community Foundation or other 501c3s and see if there was an appetite for them acting as a fiscal sponsor for those types of projects. Because we were kind of trying to get our heads around how to make that process easy, but as the county, we can't actually like take on the insurance liability and also be issuing the encroachment permit, but we can try to make the other end of the process as easy as possible by making getting through that permit process easier and by making resources available for traffic control, equipment and those types of things. So just something to think about as you're planning your various roadside vegetation projects, and something worth thinking about as well.
Does this apply to any work in the right of way? Or is it?
So the question is, does it apply to work in the right of way? And yes, it applies to work in the right of way along county maintained roads. And my understanding, and I am not a public works expert, but my understanding is some of it in terms of how they issue those encroachment permits is contingent upon the conditions of the road itself, like how fast is the speed limit, how many people are driving on the road, those types of things. And we're really just trying to get our head around how to make it easier and what sorts of things should we be thinking about. Right now, the encroachment permit has pretty blanket, no matter where you're trying to do the work, insurance requirements. And I don't know what those are off the top of my head, but the hang up seems to be, who do you get to meet those insurance obligations? Like, who acts as your sponsor for that encroachment permit? Because you can come forward with a project, but you have to have a way to show that you have the proper insurance to actually be doing that work.
Private roads? Private roads.
Private roads, no, because private roads, it's private property, right? So it doesn't apply. It's for county maintained roads that you're required to get that permit. And like we, in OES, if we want to do work along a county maintained road, we have to go through the encroachment permit process as well, because it's a different department than ours.
Are you and the county council prepared to sit down with the community foundation?
Well, that's a good question. I personally wouldn't be taking it on, but it would be something that we would maybe entertain with our public works staff. We were just having a brainstorming session earlier this week around, we know this is a barrier, and how do we best alleviate that barrier by doing the things we can do, but then also acknowledge that in addition to the insurance piece,
Firewise communities would have to get the proper training to actually go out and manage the traffic, which my understanding is there's a number of different training programs that are reasonably accessible and not terribly expensive. I think the number that was cited was $150. So then that would be another thing. It would almost be like being a DSAB, but something to think about is if you could have someone in your community who went through that training and then would basically be checking the box like, yes, as a Firewise community, we have someone who's going to fiscally sponsor us from the insurance side of things. And we have someone in our community that has that training. And then we could potentially come in with the lowest cost encroachment permit and the signage and cones and other things that would essentially be like, we'd lend you those materials. And this is all under development. We're just trying to get a sense of, is this a need? And if it was, what would it look like to help meet that need? Thank you. Yes. Yes, fundraising.
People give money to people they know and people they trust, and for causes they know and they trust. We have installed these 4 10,000 gallon water tanks along Greenhorn Road to make up for the lack of fire hydrants. We got a grant from the county, which gave us 60% of the funds we needed, and we raised the rest locally because they cared. It was their backyard and it made sense to them. We're now doing $30,000 worth of work on Lost Lake Road to improve an evacuation route. No county money. And I say it that way because people said, I'm only giving you 20 because the county's giving you 20,000. No, they didn't. What happened, which was wonderful, is somebody came up with a $10,000 matching grant. And our board donated 20% of all the money that is taken to get this thing going. So we coughed it up, and we're going to be sure the locals understand that the money was not government money. It came out of our own pockets to do that. But you build relationships, talk to people. Whether you have a meeting or not, I don't care. But if they're walking down the road, say hi. I'm Diane. Who are you? Where do you live? Do you know about this stuff? Oh, good. Let's find out more.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard about county grants, we've heard about matching funds, we've heard about asking for money, private donations. Does anyone else have a success story that they want to share?
There's one more thing about asking for money, and I learned this from when I worked for the American Red Cross for 3 years. When you make a request for somebody to donate money, shut up after you've said what you want. Don't rescue the person you're talking to. Don't say, Bill, I want you to give me $5,000 for this, but you don't have to. If what you want is $5,000, say it and let them sit with it. It's okay. Let them be a little uncomfortable for a minute. Let them process. What on earth is this person doing?
Are your services for hire? Fundraising consultation. Okay, who else has a success story to share from fundraising? How else have people raised money for their communities? Anyone? Sam?
Similarly, and it's been some years, but some years back when we were fairly new as a community, we scraped the bottom of the barrel, tried to pull together various resources and volunteer days, but still needed to hire somebody to come in with a chainsaw and a truck and put out one email, raise the money we needed, and that was that. But I think it was just what you said, that we had a track record, we had done a lot, we needed this last piece to make the whole thing work.
Thank you. How about challenges? Are there specific challenges you've encountered trying to raise money? We talked about the need for a fiscal agent, not being able to cash checks.
Does anyone else want to brainstorm a challenge? Yes.
Well, no, I can tell you one challenge we have, and probably many others, is we also have a road association and people are giving money to that. So asking for them to do additional for fire is a challenge.
I've heard that road associations are a good way to start. Like if there's already an organized road association in your community, you can also add on the fire, but this is kind of the opposite of that. Adding on the fire is just one more expense. Does anyone have an experience with a road association, positive or negative?
Really negative one. Our road association failed and we formed a Firewise community instead.
Oh. Some people, they formed a road association which failed, so they formed a Firewise community instead. Anyone else have an experience with the road association?
I have a situation where part of our Firewise community is in a road association and part of it is not. So we're strung out along 174, which is the part that is not in the road association, and then up along Dalmatian Drive, which all the feeder roads are in the road association. So that's a really cohesive unit. And it's easy to work with those people because we already have the infrastructure with our board and everything. But it's difficult, number one, to get the buy-in from the people that are not in the road association, because it's easy for them to see that we have a lot more work going on the private roads because Caltrans does most of the stuff along 174. So it's like I've got apples and oranges in the same basket. And that doesn't always work real well.
Yeah. Does anyone have any experience with this type of issue or advice they want to? Or just sympathy? Sorry, that sounds hard.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
In the city of Grass Valley, and we have our money from the last two Firewise festivals, but the work that needs to be done is on a parcel that is not owned by anybody because it's an old trolley line, and which was abandoned back in the 1930s. And when they put in a cul-de-sac next to it about 20 years ago, they pushed dirt around and made a ditch, which now the city wants to say that it's a possible wetland area that invokes, what do you call it, the CEQA stuff. And then the one road out of our community, we are right behind Save Mart Shopping Center. There's a big open parcel that hasn't been able to be sold for many years, and the owner died. And anyway, the main road out for half of the community is lined by very tall trees and blackberry bushes. And the city again says it can't enforce it because there's a wetland area right near that. And so now we do have, thankfully, I got one of our neighbors to take up the ball on this, and he's talking to somebody at the county, and we're waiting for California Fish and Wildlife guy to come out and look at these two areas, the old trolley line and the road with all of this potential flaming wall of fire on it. And so that he can hopefully tell us, because I have said these are not creeks, they are ditches. They are not creeks. Anyway, if you can run into all kinds of problems like that when you've got that kind of issue going on, and it's not easy.
All right, at least we can commiserate. Yeah.
This is actually not in my Firewise community. It's another one I'm familiar with, regarding raising money. That was the easy part. They're trying to build a secondary evacuation route out through my lady friend's property into the next property to connect to another road. The property they want to build through, I think they have the landowner's permission.
Wow. What you got in your hand there, buddy?
Or
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
What?
What you carrying in your hand?
Nothing. Are you still on the phone?
Yeah.
How do you deal with the covenant or whatever it's called that might prevent you from.
Just
putting in a
upset
50
with
access road.
what they're doing across the way. And I will sell this fucking house before that ever happens, because it's going to drive the price of this house
I'm
down.
really,
to
I probably
nothing.
shouldn't be speaking secondhand. I think
They
someone
build
in our area is
duplexes over
doing the
here.
same thing.
I don't know what
you're
planning. Well, we need to find out, and we need to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, same.
Because we were told
I thought
that we were never going to do anything over here when we bought this house. Okay, and Christopher Rocky said they were going to actually maintain this over here to its natural. Okay, I'm tired.
Hi, it's Brad Daniels.
Don't
You bet.
set for me on the.
Very active.
Well, the facts are there, right? We need to find, okay, we need to.
Largest
Yeah,
landowner
we need to-
in the area has the least maintained land.
Because
My
we
property
were,
is surrounded by 250
we were
acres.
told that they weren't going to do anything.
Is there ever an effort to get them, BLM, to these meetings, to get them involved? Yes, I did lack it. Thanks. I know, not much hope, right?
That's a great suggestion. We will talk about that at our next steering committee meeting.
Some years ago at the Fire Safe Council, we had BLM show up. And then they had a closed door meeting and I went outside with BLM. And I said, I know so many people that want to clean up BLM land, but you know, you really can't go on BLM and clean it up. And the BLM guy in El Dorado told me, if you have 3 or 4 parcels of landowners, I don't know why that matters. I think if you had enough land, that they will come out from El Dorado County BLM office and clean it up. That's what they told us. That was, it's a lie. Okay, that was 5 years ago.
We had a lot of experience with BLM. And so 7 years ago, we started a fight with BLM about clearing a 200-foot fuel break on the south side of Sherwood Forest. And after 4 years, we finally got their attention. And now you can apply to BLM to cut a 200-foot fuel break adjacent to your property. And it's a relatively slam dunk thing now. You don't have to go through all the alphabet soup stuff. They did, however, send out with, oh yeah, we have it on the website. The problem is, if you decide to do something on BLM property, you get to do it. I mean, you can't. They have nobody. I mean, they have one law enforcement person for I think 4 or 5 counties. I mean, I know that because we had an order of trespass on one of our neighbors, and they never did execute the order of trespass. But you can do it. You can cut a 200-foot fuel break. You yourself can cut it. Now, Sherwood Forest was lucky because we had Cal Fire and Cal National Guard cut it for us, but then we had to chip it. That's why I had to raise the $10,000. Now we have to maintain it. So we're out there now weed whacking and hauling logs and limbing trees. But the only thing we can't do, we're not supposed to use herbicides on the land, but other than that we can do, and we can't cut hardwoods, but everything else we're allowed to do. We even managed to piggyback onto a lumber contract that had been let, and actually, I think it was BLM actually came in and cut down 7 mature pines that were about 40 inches at the base. We couldn't cut those down, and they dropped them for us. They're all sort of leaning toward houses, and they were dead. But you can work with BLM. Yeah, up there. And their office is in El Dorado, yeah. So,
See an action section of the website.
yeah, they should be easier to work with now. If not, actually let me know and I'll see if, what's his name, Jerry, I think, is still there. I still have contact with him sometimes.
All right. I love that we can learn from each other's experiences, even if they're not related to fundraising. Is there anything more people would like to share or brainstorm around fundraising, challenges, successes, questions, ideas? All right. Yes.
I'll just. It isn't so much fundraising, but it does relate to money. Now, our congressional representative Kylie just sent out a missive by email in pointing out that he had put a bill before the House called the Safe Homes Act. And its focus was to provide a 25% tax credit for home hardening, with a list of what would constitute that, as it would be retroactive to 2022, as long as you were in or in some distance or neighboring to an area that had been declared a disaster area or had suffered from one, which pretty quickly would cover most of the parts of California that can burn, I should think, which is one route to encouraging or helping out with the exercises that are part and parcel of defensible space, which is a kind of fundraising.
Thank you. All right. If there are no more fundraising ideas to discuss, I've just received some information that we have a special guest here, one of Grass Valley's newest employees, if rumors are to be believed. Dwayne Strauser has offered to give us an update since Rocky can't get his audio to work. Thank you.
Especially like Susan, to your question. So I can't speak for Rocky. I only met him for the first time for, I think, 5 minutes yesterday. I just got back from Southern California myself late Sunday night. I have now accepted the position of Community Risk Reduction Manager with the City of Grass Valley. So it's going to be very similar to the program that Nevada City now has in place and has moved forward with Evan McClinton, and in coordination kind of with what Trucky's been doing with the the Firewise type software programs with defensible space inspections. Just getting my feet wet, but basically it's Measure B. Mr. Branston, what you guys have set the table for now for Grass Valley, I think set them up for success. And Grass Valley is moving forward pretty robustly with what's going to be required of my position and the people within this department. Mastication on city properties, working with the community members. We're already getting community members coming in, talking about properties that have been overgrown for years that need attention, some that actually threaten communications towers or water treatment plants. And so basically they're requiring that things move forward quickly. We're talking about several thousand defensible space inspections within the first 6 months. So Nevada City's kind of doing the same thing. We're looking at working with hopefully the Firewise communities, getting some of the pre-qualified inspectors to come work with us. I've already talked to Casey within your group about that. We're going to be looking at coordinating, and one of the top 5 priorities for the city of Grass Valley is quickly trying to onboard as many Firewise communities as they can in areas that have not been covered by your organization. And not just onboarding, but then maintaining and trying to help strengthen the organization with support from the back end also. I think that's always been an issue, is it's easy to cut a trail, but then you don't maintain it. So if we onboard, we've got to support those communities. So anyway, Bob, I'll talk to you about your question with Bear Yuba Land Trust. I've got a little background on that from my various experiences. Susan, I'll talk to you about that property. That's exactly, I think, why they are bringing
this on board from the ballot measure is to address these situations that have not been maintained. And what we know, especially after Patrick, what we've all seen down in Southern California, we can't move forward as is in the same model. Home hardening is going to be crucial. It's terrible when you go down and you see residential homes that have gone up and the vegetation around the home has not been touched, but the home is gone. That works backwards. People don't get that, counterintuitive. And the comments about the fence lines, my house is the same way, nice fence. We've got to get the wood 5 feet away from the house with some kind of a gate. Not everybody can afford that. So how do we find funding for that? We have a lot of fixed income folks, obviously in Grass Valley, Nevada County as a whole, where I live in Nevada City. So we've got a lot going on, and I'll be leaning on all of you for input. Swimming pool idea tonight, amazing, brilliant. So, I mean, even throughout a community that does have fire hydrants, as we saw down in Southern California, many of them were dry. They were not working. There are swimming pools all over Malibu, obviously, even with the ocean right there. So you guys have a lot of great ideas that we'll be tapping into, and I'm looking forward to working with you. But I'm sorry I couldn't speak for Chief Buttran or Chief Goodspeed or Rocky per se on the fire departments themselves for you guys tonight. I'll work with them next time if they can't be here and have a more articulate presentation put together for you. But I knew they've already moved forward with the 50% of the Measure B funding when hiring actual firefighters, trained professional firefighters. That's part of what the ballot measure was for. That's already in the works, already happening. I believe some have already been hired, some are already in training, so it's moving forward. And Bob, thank you for your foresight with your time on City Council there for pushing that forward and sticking your neck out.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Yes.
We are not a recognized Firewise community yet, but we're really close, right? We're Baca, we're out north Bloomfield. We're a really big Firewise community. We back up to a number of other communities, Lightning Tree and Harmony. Cooper Road goes out, pavement stops. It is an easement or part of someone's property becomes dirt, is very overgrown, doesn't have turnouts. I think you know where I'm speaking of, Patrick. Then is paved again. We're talking about a quarter of a mile maybe. And it is what would you call it? It's thank you, a pinch point. And we have so few exits out of a highly densely populated area. If everybody leaves at the same time, people are not going to make it out of there. We met with the landowner and got fabulous stories of great imagination and an unwillingness to work with us to even just widen the road. It's away from this house. It would not be a problem if it got paved. That would be ultimate if it got paved, but we just wanted to widen it. What do we as a Firewise community have in our toolbox to, I mean, I don't want to use the word force, but I don't know, gently encourage somebody like that. I mean, he is the pinch point for hundreds and hundreds, possibly thousands of people. I
County
don't
road.
believe so. I believe, I'm sorry. We call it the Enchanted Forest. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think that's possible. Yes. So my understanding is that that road used to go in front of the property of the people who don't want to improve. And it was, they cleared and had it moved. Still on their property, but away from their home, so that Cooper Road wasn't in front of their household. It's 100% Forest Service. So given that, this would be huge. What can we do? Who do we approach? How do we get this done? Lawyer up?
Starting.
So this stretch of road was identified by lightning tree in the evacuation study in that community appendix as being a priority. So it's something that OES could certainly bring up with our partners at Forest Service around their appetite for doing some sort of work along there. Our GNA is to basically work for roadside vegetation management objectives along Forest Service roads, but they have really fantastic people at Forest Service who are very proactive in terms of addressing community wildfire mitigation needs. So I'll circle back. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I think on that note, we're gonna close it down and give you a few minutes back. Our next meeting is in May, the second Tuesday in May. I don't have the date off the top of my head. Does anyone have the date? Oh, thank you. May 6th. And it will be here again. We're going to be here for the next few meetings until August, and we'll be in Truckee for August. Loved all the sharing of ideas. If you have other ideas for topics you'd like us to address or best practices you'd like to share, thank you, Terry and Randall. Please get in touch with us or just talk to me or email us. We'd love to hear from you because we'd love to keep this conversation going. And thank you, special thank you to our community partners and moonlighting, our fire partners, moonlighting partners. Dwayne, thank you. Thanks everyone for braving the weather. See you in May. Thank you.
Next time.